Vanos install part 2. Let's go! Before you put this on, you'll notice it's a little glossy. There is oil on this. You do want to oil this part before you put it on. So make sure to slap some oil on it, on the chain, all that good stuff. Get it all nice and wet. Nobody likes going in dry. Now we are going to start reinstalling the spring plate. So for instance, this M50 actually has just this plate. It doesn't actually have the spring diaphragm, and so that guy is just basically going to go over on this, and then you're going to bolt that down. I'm installing the spring diaphragm from the S52 to show you guys. So these bolts here that bolt onto the intake cam are actually a little different than the M50 ones. So if you'll notice, these have like a little rounded spot for the spring diaphragm. The M50 ones don't. So if you have just an M50, just throw this plate on, screw the nuts back on, and then torque them the way you would with the spring diaphragm. So since we are installing the spring diaphragm setup on this, I do have these studs here, the correct studs for the spring diaphragm. So basically, you're going to want to install the 2mm plate first, the thinner one. That guy just pops right on. Good to throw some oil on here too. Also, if you want to throw Loctite on these guys, I usually do that. So, and then the spring plate is going to go in with the bow facing out. Don't install that guy backwards. And then our thicker plate is going to go right up front. Our nuts go on. So if you don't have the spring diaphragm set up, you can just run these guys down. But with the spring diaphragm, I like to sort of run them in evenly, sort of distribute the pressure across all of them. And those guys get torqued to 89 inch-pounds. There we go. And now from here we are going to put our plate on for the exhaust side. It's also a good idea to throw some Loctite on these guys as well. And for these, for now, we're just going to do them hand tight. We will torque these later. It just needs to be able to slide around for when we actually install the Vanos. Alright, so from here is where we're going to want to install that shiny new Vanos gasket you got. And if you didn't go out and get a new Vanos gasket, you're wrong, and you needed to go out and get a new Vanos gasket. So now from here we're basically going to prep the unit. So we're going to take this guy and we're going to crank him all the way to the right until he stops. And from here we're going to basically just install the Vanos now. Now you want this piston to be compressed all the way down. You don't want them sticking out. So you want to make sure you have a good amount of oil inside here and on the piston. As you can tell, it's kind of shiny. That's so on first startup, when it's not being lubricated yet, it still has some oil to run off of it, not just running dry on the gears. So you're going to want to spin this guy in a little bit until he clicks into place. We're going to take this guy again. Try and get this guy down towards on the bottom more, because we're going to be rotating it this way. So when you rotate this entire upper assembly this way, it's going to sort of pull the Vanos piston in, and that's what we want. So you're going to sort of have to rotate it with one hand and push the Vanos on with another, and you want the Vanos piston to catch inside the gear. So that actually caught pretty quickly, and that's what we want. It might take a couple attempts to get it to sit, to get it to suck in. So as you notice, there's a little bit of a delay from when it caught, so that's not good. So give it a couple spins, get it to set back in. You want it to catch the second the chain starts to rotate, and it's kind of a trick to get it to do that. It might take you a couple attempts. Okay, so you see that sort of pulled it in right as the chain started to rotate. So there we go. So that sucked it in a little bit. And so now we're just going to rotate it the rest of the way in and try and get the Vanos unit to sit on. Sort of hit the housing in till it sits flush. So there we go. What you don't want to do when that sets is continue to crank it over once it's already been set in. I've made that mistake before. I can't tell you what it does, but it just messes shit up and it doesn't work right, basically. So just once it catches, once it gets sucked in a little bit more, just sort of feed the rest of the housing in, and then you can start installing the external hardware for the Vanos housing. So the torque spec for this guy is 24 foot-pounds, and that seems like a lot since they are just crush washers. So, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to get a torque wrench under there with the thermostat being in the way. If you're just replacing your Vanos, kind of a pain. So I usually just take a 19mm and I just go to what I feel like. So pretty tight. I've done that a few times and it hasn't leaked, but if you do that and it starts leaking, then I would try and get a torque wrench under there. Try and torque that guy. Seems like a lot and it seems kind of unnecessary in my honest opinion. I've never had a problem with torquing it like that. Alright, so from here we're going to torque down these exhaust bolts. They are E10 and they get torqued to 192 inch-pounds. So, and I sort of like to do it in a cross pattern, like a store pattern, like you're torquing lug nuts in a way. There we go. Now from here we can take off our Allen key for the chain tensioner. So now we're going to run the access plugs in to the Vanos. And you're supposed to torque them to 37 foot-pounds. I usually torque them to 30 because that's what the chain tensioner is set for. It seems excessive anyway. These guys don't really do much. There we go. So now we're going to remove the chain tensioner tool. So I'm going to thread this guy out and thread him out. So this M50 has this style of chain tensioner, and it sort of has this indent right here for the chain guide. This is off my S52, it doesn't have that. So if you have this style tensioner, you could just thread it in and torque it, but with this style, you sort of want to make sure that the tensioner runs in between these two slots there. So sort of get it straightened in and lined up. If you look down by the exhaust cam with a flashlight, you can sort of see if you're getting it lined up properly. There we go. And that sucker is 32 millimeters. And he gets torqued to 30 foot-pounds. There we go. So that is it. The Vanos unit is installed. From here you can take the cam locks off and you can pull the flywheel lock pin out. And a good way to check if you got the timing right is to take a 22 millimeter wrench like this, slap it on the crank, give it a good rotation, and if you can rotate it all the way back to top dead center and put the cam locks on, you're good to go. If you rotate it around and you can't get the cam locks on, you might want to check gear timing. So either with the main timing gear here, go back and review the earlier part on this video on how to set that. And to set the cam timing, the upper timing chain, I have a separate video for that like I mentioned in the description. So go check that out. It might take a couple tries on and off. I know I probably pulled it off and put it back on twice the first time I ever did it. So that's it. The Vanos is on. Good to go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Keep it fresh and I will see you guys later. Maybe you should take it slow. second. Fucking lit, dude. I totally just boned myself right now. Now I gotta fucking reset this shit. Motherfucker.